So, it is Friday night, a little past 10. Getting started on a new project. This is going to be a little bit different than my normal content. I am building a sculpture slash monument, I suppose, for the Satanic Temple. This is going in a Veterans Memorial Park in Belle Plaine, Minnesota. I wanted to get an early start because I just got the steel in today, and I'm using AR-500, which is, if you don't know, is a pre-hardened steel plate, commonly used in bulldozer blades, excavator buckets. It's also used as armor plating, and it is bullet resistant. It's used in plate carriers for bulletproof vests and so forth. It'll stop most small arms fire, for sure. This is mainly just due to vandalism concerns. I'm making this as strong as possible. It will survive just about anything, including a car running it over, I'm guessing. So that's what we're working on today. It's going to be, the base of it is going to be a cube, so that's what I'm starting with, is some square pieces of steel. I gotta prep them, grind them, sand them, so on and so forth. I'll take you through every step of the process. Hopefully this is a fairly quick build. I don't need it to be a multi-month build like my normals, but we'll see how it goes. Alright, threw together a little box of scrap plywood and 2x4s. Gonna use this got a heavy-duty rubberized tarp that should hold the vinegar in, and now I gotta just stack the steel plates in there. So that's that. I used about 6 gallons of vinegar. I'll leave that for about a day or so. Actually, overnight should be fine. This is brand new fresh vinegar. You can see all the bottles over there. A good 12 hours is enough. I will uncover this tomorrow, and we'll get to the cleaning up of the scale and the sanding of the surface in preparation for some etching. So not bad. Pretty straight cut. I kind of was leaning on the torch a bit, so it's got a bit of a bevel, but that's actually not a problem because I was planning on beveling all these edges prior to welding to get the best penetration and strength possible. So in a way, I've kind of pre-beveled it unintentionally. That works. If you're wondering what I was doing, I was chiseling off the slag from the plasma cut edge, and then I was grinding it smooth. This whole part I was hitting it with 36 grit sandpaper and then 80 grit. I want to get a nice smooth, perfectly clean surface for the etchings that are going to be next. And I've got a big vinyl template I'm going to apply here. I need it to stick perfectly or the etchings will not come out. And if you're wondering why I was changing directions, it's simply because the scratch marks, the circular scratch marks, change direction when I change direction, and I can see where I've been and where I haven't been easier. It also helps randomize the scratch marks a bit so that they're not so apparent on the finished product, but that won't matter much on this one. We're intending to have a rough, mottled, textured surface when I'm done. So while I'm marinating some more pieces of steel in my little bin over there, I'm going to work on part of the base. Now the base is going to be elevated about 6 inches on a stand, so this is 6-inch wide flat bar, and since it is normal mild steel, I can cut it via traditional methods. So onto it. So I did a vinyl template of my intended pentagram etchings. I had to chop off that corner. My cutter doesn't have the capacity to do quite a big enough size, but I'll just fill that in with some vinyl or some electrical tape, I suppose. This will act as a template and a resist for my etching, which you'll see shortly. So pretty simple vinyl application here. I've marked out a grid of where the decal needs to be. I've got it placed, and then I just tape across the center, and I'll peel off the backing paper on one side, cut it here, adhere this down, and then pull up the other side and do it on that side. It's good for big decals like this where it's hard to get everything nice and flat, no air bubbles, you know, with only 2 hands basically. You'll see what I mean in a second. And there you have it. You can see the corner of that star, the pentagram, are lined up with this grid line. This side does too. You can't really see it, it's underneath, but just lets me know I made the design correctly. So now I'm just going to line the whole thing with electrical tape, just because I got some really thin borders here, and then etching time. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to steal a page from the Michael Cthulhu book. I'm going to make a border with silly putty, and this high or so, and then I'll fill that area with salt water so I can do my etching. Normally I like to submerge the entire piece when doing etching, but that means I would have to mask off the entire thing, both sides of it, and on 4 pieces. So this is a faster way to do it, I think. We'll see. We're all ready for the salt water. Hopefully my walls don't leak, but I guess we'll see. Alright, we're ready to etch here. My walls are holding. This grate is the sacrificial steel. It'll provide basically equal distance from the to be etched material. I got my negative attached to the sacrificial metal, positive on the plate. Here goes nothing, I guess. You see it all bubbling up in various places. It'll eventually be the whole thing. By the way, there are vinyl feet on this grate, so it's not touching any of the actual plate underneath. Alright, so I'm sure I'll cut out a bunch of footage, but it's about a little past midnight now. This has been going for about 8 hours, and this is the maximum amount of power output I can get from this thing. So I think I'm going to drain it and see what the etchings look like. I don't think I got enough depth, but I'll probably have to touch it up by hand. Stay tuned. Alright, all cleaned up. As you can see, it came out really well. I was just starting to get some undercut on the template. You can kind of see the little bit of a border there, where enough metal gets eaten away that it actually starts eating underneath the vinyl. So that was about it for the etching, I guess. Next up is lots of die grinding and filing and sanding, I suppose. Alright, so the etch pentagram came out very well. Perfect dimensions, nice clean lines and everything, but it did take 8 hours, and the depth of the etching was a bit shallow. So I'm gonna have to go over it with a die grinder and angle grinder perhaps, and deepen that etch a bit. So given the amount of time that took and will take, and the time crunch that this project is on, I'm attempting something a little different. I'm going to use a piece of angle iron at the straight edge, and I'm going to use these magnets to hold it in place, and then I'm going to use the angle grinder to grind the outside edge of each line and then the inside edge, and then I can just use a die grinder and a freehand angle grinder and to get the middle part. I've already tested this. That one took 2 hours, and the depth is about 3 times as much as the etching, so this one is actually done. It does look a little bit uglier, but that's not the point. I actually want it to be rough like this because I'm going to melt bronze into that etched area, and then I'm going to sand it all back smooth with the surface of the steel, so it'll look fine once it's all done anyway. In fact, the etching was almost a little too perfect. I would have to rough it up just to stick the bronze a little bit better anyway. So that's what we're going with. I have high hopes. So here we have the manually etched pentagram. It came out pretty well. There's no real mistakes. There's one little, it's literally just a scratch. I can barely feel it. I'll just sand that out later. I got the depth I wanted. It's all roughed up nicely for the future brass bronze inlays. According to the camera timer, that was actually only about 90 minutes, not including the the layout and the measuring and the vinyl application and all that. So under 2 hours is not too bad, and I'm completely ready for the next step. So I've run into a bit of a problem here. You can see the start of the bronze brazing here. I'm doing just one bead at a time to try to spread the heat out, but it was not enough. As you can see, that is one warped piece of steel. So I'm going to clamp the pieces down to the table, and I'm actually going to weld them on the edges, all the edges, maybe 4 or 5, 6 tack welds, and hopefully that'll keep it flat, and it will allow the table to act as a heat sink from the heat coming through the plate, instead of just localizing on that plate itself and eventually warping it. I'll weld one down here, and I'll weld one on this side, and then I'll switch off to further dissipate the heat. But hopefully that's enough, because these plates are pretty tough, and getting them flat again is going to be near impossible. In fact, I'm pretty sure this one is ruined. I have one other one that's slightly warped, and then I have 2 that are still flat, so we'll see. Alright, so as you can see, I've got everything tacked down in a million places, both plates. I'm actually going to be using my MIG setup. I didn't even realize it, but they make silicon bronze MIG wire. So I'm borrowing my argon from my TIG welder, and I'm going to attempt that just for a convenience factor. With the TIG, you're sort of heating up the bronze and it just kind of melts where it wants to melt. The MIG is got better directional control, I guess is the best way, at least for me it is. The trick is going to be melting the bronze on there, making it stick, but minimizing the heat so that I don't run into warping problems again. I don't know, this may warp regardless. It's only welded at the edges. The plate underneath it, at 3/8 inch, it should hopefully draw some of the heat out. A giant heat sink basically, but this may just end up a giant mess no matter what, and I may just have to, blacksmith these plates semi-flat again once I'm done. So, it's the next day. I almost completed all the brazing yesterday, but unfortunately my grand plan to prevent warpage seems to have failed. Looks like overnight while the plate cooled, this happened. Look at that. Looks like it pulled up about 10 welds. And that is a significant warp. Wow. I thought I was doing good by doing single beads, then working on the other piece, and then taking a break and doing a single bead again. They've never really got that hot, but I guess all the heat cycles is what did it. Part of me actually wonders if, doing it in one go is better, so it's not just constantly heat cycling, hot to cold, just do it once, but I'm not really sure, honestly. That one pulled up too, over here. You can see it pulled up about 5 of the welds right on the corner. That's not too bad. I'll clamp it back down and re-weld it. Interesting that one didn't warp that badly. Although, if I take a look at it here, yeah, I mean, I did about the same amount of brazing. There's only a few passes left to make. Actually, there's just this one. I think that's it. 2. So I actually only had 2 more passes left. This one here, and then this one on the inside. So they both got brazed the same amount. Same voltages, same everything, really. Interesting how one warped much worse than the other. Well, I'm going to try to bend them back down, clamp them down, re-weld them. I'm going to use a different welding wire. This is ER80S2, I think it is. SD2 maybe. It's for welding dissimilar steels, a higher carbon steel to a mild steel, which is basically what I've done. This table is just mild steel. These plates are AR500. It's a medium carbon alloy. And maybe I'll do more tack welds. I'm still not really even convinced that no matter how well I secure it, that when I'm done, when I cut the welds off, it's not just going to spring into a C shape basically. So if I didn't have enough problem with this build, this is the inside of my MIG gun, and apparently, this is my spool of bronze here. Apparently, bronze being weaker than steel is trying to push this wire with this roller into the gun, right? And it's just getting all bound up, and it creates what's called a rat's nest. Any kind of obstruction in the line or just brief bind up, and it just freaks out, and it can't push the wire down the line, and it just all bundles up in here. And this has happened a lot. There's probably a couple 100 feet of wire on the ground there. At times I've only gotten an inch of braze, and then it binds up again, and then I have to pull it all the way out of the gun, 10 feet of it, and refeed it into the mechanism and try it again. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to replace the liner to the MIG gun. It's been a couple of years. It might help free up the wire as it's traveling through it. And I got some slightly thicker wire. This is 30 thousandths, and I bought some 35 thousandths. The thicker wire plus the new liner may possibly give me the edge I need to not waste hundreds of feet of wire. And this stuff is about 150 bucks a spool, so it's getting very expensive very quickly. But trucking on. So, after a whole lot of grinding and sanding, I used a 9-inch grinder and a 7-inch sanding discs. This is 16 grit, very aggressive. This is what we end up with. I'm not sure if you can actually see it that well on camera. On the viewfinder, it's very hard to see, but it's there. Came out pretty well, despite all my efforts in kind of glopping the bronze on as heavy as possible and then grinding it back. There are still some imperfections. There. It's not too bad. What I'll do is I'll mark these all off, and I will re-weld them or re-braze them with bronze, fill them in, grind them back again, and that should be about it. I've completed one already. I'll show you that in a second here. So here is the one that I've completed. I filled in all the voids and ground them all back, and then I sanded it to a better finish. So this gives you a realistic idea of how it's actually going to come out. It's not perfect. I mean, you can see little tiny divots and dents and imperfections, but this is about as good as it's going to get. I mean, it is handmade. It's not, you know, this wasn't, you know, CNC cutout or anything, so all my sanding is done by hand. That's probably the worst one. Everything else looks pretty good. Now what's actually going to happen, or what actually is happening, is you may be aware, but when you heat metal, it expands, right? So what a lot of people don't know is when it cools back down, it shrinks. It shrinks smaller than it was originally by a very small amount. So I've applied a whole bunch of heat to just this one side of the plate, and then once it cools, the top of the plate is slightly smaller, so it tries to shrink and curl up like that. What I'm not going to do here is, while this is still welded down, I'm going to heat the whole thing quite hot with my oxyacetylene torch. I'm going to heat it evenly all the way through, and then I'm going to let it sit and cool naturally. Hopefully that will kind of normalize the plate, I guess, is the best way I could put it. It may help relieve some of the stresses. Alright, so I got the plate around 400 degrees, pretty even. You can see the color is starting to form on the plate. That's about as far as I want to go. It's making some pretty ugly noises. I'm not really sure if I made the problem better or worse, but I guess that's what trial and error is all about. I actually kind of like that contrast with the, you know, the steel color changes and the bronze that stayed mostly the same. There we go. So, I cut all the welds free. The right one is the one that I tried to normalize with heat. Left one is the one I tried to normalize with peening. And I'm not sure how well you can see this, but they've kind of warped in different ways. But I'd say roughly the same amount. The right one looks more warped, but just because it's just one side. But really, if you look at the outside edges of both of this one, it probably equals the same amount of deflection. It's like the whole edge. It's interesting. This one's like just two sides for whatever reason, but neither one really seemed to do much. Honestly, I kind of doubt it did anything. I believe when you peen welds, you're supposed to do it while the weld is still hot. And the heating probably would have worked better if I had used more heat, but as you can see, it was just starting to change colors, and getting it too hot would have ruined the temper of the steel and thus the durability, which was the whole point in choosing this steel in the first place. So it doesn't seem like either one is a good option. I probably won't waste my time. So now I've got the other two to do, and this is the one that's really nasty. And I've only done it's not even a third, so call it 25%. This one's gonna warp like crazy, but I'll clamp it down, I'll weld it, as well as the fourth one, which is gonna go over there, and hope for the best. But if I can get anything like that, I think that's workable. I can try to fix it a bit, and I can fix it while I'm constructing the cube. That'll give me the edge I need, I think. It may not be perfect when it's done, but this is the artwork, not a machining project, and I don't think there's much more I could have done. Alright, so day 4 of horrible mess. I'm actually replacing the entire unit and the gun. Hopefully that will resolve some problems. It was binding up even with steel welding, so something's wrong. Something's binding up in the cable, so even with the new liner. We'll see how this one goes. Alright, so I'm sure I'll edit out many hours of brazing, grinding, and sanding, but I've got all 4 pentagrams done. Can you even see that with the sun glaring off of it? Probably, hopefully. So here they are. They're still welded down. I'm going to let them cool as much as possible before I cut them. So the next step is trying to straighten out these guys. Got quite a bit of warp in them. And that one too. I'm going to try to heat up the back sides. The idea being I've already applied a lot of heat to the, to the bronze side, the underside that we're looking at right now, and that has kind of curled the plate. And I'm gonna, with heat on the other side, it'll hopefully curl it the other way, maybe getting it roughly flat, or maybe making it much worse. Who knows? But this is the only one way to find out. Alright, so I've heated the center, as you can see from the discoloration, and I'm letting it cool. It actually seems to be working. You can see the gap. It's not much anymore. Alright, well, I'm not sure how well you're going to see this, but if you've seen my previous videos, this is my giant sword bending jig that I made up. It's got a 20-ton jack on the bottom. I'm going to attempt to uncurl this plate just to get that last little bit of deflection out of it. So I ended up using so much pressure on the bending jig, you can see I actually bent the 2 bars of my jig. So that's about as much as I wanted to push it. I actually had to use a extra jack handle on the bottle jack here because it was getting so hard to pump. So end result, absolutely nothing. I mean, you can see the wobble on the plate. I should pick it up here. I mean, yeah. It's just kind of like a potato chip, basically. It's not uniformly warped. And I don't think I've really made any real progress, so I'm quitting that endeavor. The only thing I really did learn is if I heat the whole plate up quite a bit, it actually wants to flatten itself out. And then once it cools, it re-warps. So I may end up just heating each plate a whole lot and then, you know, tack welding it into the cube shape while it's still hot, and then hoping it holds once the you know, the reinforcement of the cube shape allows it or keeps it from distorting again once the whole thing cools off. It's gonna be tricky, but not seeing too many other options. Yeah, so let's give that a try, I suppose. All right, so time to work on the base for this thing. Base is going to be very simple. This is just a 1/4 inch mild steel plate, same size as the cube. On top of it is going to go a square made of these 6-inch flat bar pieces, just to get it off the ground, about 6 inches. I want to get this done now. I'm actually going to paint the base plate black. The rest of the cube is not going to be painted. It's going to have a nice kind of ancient black patina on it, but I wanted to paint the base plate so that it's protected from rust the most, given that it's going to be touching the ground or perhaps even buried under the ground. So build it first, paint it, let it dry while I work on the rest of the pieces. Alright, we are ready to rock here. I've got the base plate clamped down everywhere along the edges. When I weld along the perimeter, it's going to try to curl the plate a bit, but I'm just kind of trying to minimize that. The plate was actually slightly warped to begin with, so I had the warp side down, so hopefully it'll actually straighten up a little bit with the heat on the top. I got these all square with each other and with the plate. It's time to tack it up and then get to welding. Not too bad. Kind of stumbled right there at the end a little bit. Good enough. This will be hidden anyway. Alright, so it's the next day. It's time to unclamp the base and see if it has warped and how much it has warped. Hopefully not too much. Alright, let's see how we did. Definitely lifted off the table, but that ain't much. Just the tiniest bit, I'd say. Let's see here. Looks like the most is right in the middle here. I mean, let's try that again. Basically a 1/16 of an inch. I can deal with that. So I forgot to have the camera running when I started this, but this is the framework for the cube. I've got all the pieces here and here. I'm basically going to make this structure to have something to clamp the warped side plates to. Clamp them flat, weld them into place while they're flat, and hopefully they'll stay that way. I just need to make this structure strong enough that it doesn't distort when, you know, the force of the distorted metal pulls against it. And I need to make it as square and perfect as possible, so the cube comes out correct. Using down here, this is a little jig made just for this purpose. You can see the top piece is clamped into place here, and then this, you know, centers these 2 points and pushes them into the upright. And you know, you can get a few welds in here. I'm just tacking it up now. Then I'll measure it and make sure it's perfect, and then I'll do the final welds. But handy little tool. These little blocks under the corners are just 1-inch machining blocks. They're 1 by 2 by 3 exactly. So the base of this clamp jig thing is 1 inch. So I just wanted to make everything on the same level. Ideally, you would actually use 4 of those jigs at the same time, you know, 1 for each corner, but they're, you know, $250 a piece, so I didn't feel like spending the money on something I rarely use. Well, I'm all done tacking it up. It's about as good as it's gonna get, I think. You can just see, not sure how well on the camera you can see, tiny bit of sunlight, but it's not more than about a 32nd, probably even less, probably like a 64th of an inch. And these square tube bars, or sections rather, probably weren't that straight to begin with, so I'm calling it good. I'll add some cross bracing, and we can get started on the side panels. Alright, moment of truth here. I've clamped these tabs in place on the 2 sides just so I can locate the panels correctly, especially since they'll kind of change as they flatten out. May require a little hammer persuasion, but lots of clamps, and hopefully this works. Alright, well, after using every single clamp in my shop, I've actually gotten it flat. You can see in here, about as flat as it's gonna get. A little bit of daylight, but that's because it looks like this piece is slightly higher. It's about as good as it's gonna get, I think. It looks bigger than it is just because of the rolled edge of this square tubing. I don't see any daylight except for just that one corner over there. Time to flip it over and start welding. Oh, all done. Looks like it worked. You can see the heat marks on the center, all along the edges where it was welded. Seems to stay flat. Can't complain. Alright, so as you can see, the cube is coming along, but before I can attach the top, I need to prepare it for two things. First thing is some sort of mounting system for the helmet that's going to be on it, and then a plaque. So I'm going to make a plaque out of bronze. I've got some 1/16 inch thick bronze. I think this is naval bronze, just for the corrosion resistance. And then I've got my vinyl templates. I don't know if you can see this. I can't tell in the viewfinder, but it's basically, I printed out the same inscription in different sizes, and I decided on this one. It's about 8 inches wide and 1 inch tall, so it's gonna be, it's a good size plaque, but I wanted it to be legible, and as you can kind of see, the letters get pretty delicate at this size, so any smaller and it was getting real tough. Just all those little pieces and everything. It took me like an hour to do this with an X-Acto. You know, cutting out, just grabbing all those little pieces and pulling them off. But yeah, so I'm going to use this as a template. I'm going to cut out my plaque, and then I'll use the template to etch the letters into the plaque. Then I'll know where to put the holes on the top before I weld the top on. It's going to be a lot harder to drill. I really need to use a drill press for the hardened steel, so the holes have to be done ahead of time. I've sanded this with some 500 grit on the random orbital just to give it a uniform brushed look. Time to stick the vinyl template on top, and then we can get to etching those letters into the bronze. Shouldn't take too long. Alright, we're ready to start with the etching here. You can see I've got the bronze with the template over it, and I've masked off everything but the letters. There is a wire coming out of here that's going to be my positive. I'm going to drop this in the saltwater solution. I have no idea why it's that color. I've used it before. It might have been the steel, you know, precipitating out or something. But I'll put that in there. I've got my sacrificial steel. That's going to go right on top, like so. And that is connected to my negative. I always screw those up. I'm pretty sure that's right. Sacrificial steel on the negative. So I guess I'll turn on my DC power supply. Alright, it's back to drilling time here. So this is the base upside down. I'm going to put some 3/4 inch holes in each corner just to give some ground mounting options. Some sort of ground anchor or whatever. I'm not sure what's going to be used, but it's going to be nearly impossible to drill holes after this thing is constructed, so I'd rather have them and not need them than need them and not have them. So here goes nothing. By the way, in case you're wondering, this is a carbide tooth hole saw. This is just mild steel, this base plate. Bimetal regular hole saw could cut it, but this will just make faster work of it, and it won't put as much wear on the hole saw itself. Alright, so I've got all my 3/4 inch holes in the corners here. The only thing left to do is I'm gonna sand this lightly and spray paint it black. Just the base plate itself, nothing else. I'm just looking for maximum rust protection since this is going to be the part in contact with the ground. The rest of the structure is not going to be painted in any way. It's going to be more of a natural looking blackened patina, but I don't know why this matters. It really shouldn't, especially since it's going to be facing the ground, but whatever. It'll take me 5 minutes to do this, and might as well. We've got all 4 sides attached now from the inside only. You can see the welds in there. It only took forever, but at least it worked, and they're all nice and flat now. I've got a few pieces of this square tubing left. I'm gonna just use that for internal bracing. I'll probably put 1 down the bottom, 2 in an X configuration in the middle, and then 1 at the top, just for the hell of it, I guess. At this point, I don't really think it's needed. I don't think any of that is really needed, but I've got the pieces, and it'll just be stronger, so why not? After that, just attach the bottom and the top, which right here. They're pretty flat. One's tiny bit warped and one is not at all. They're just as they came from the mill, so should be much easier to attach and flatten out versus these horribly distorted pieces. But yeah, hopefully I can get that done without too much trouble anyway. Alright, so after about 10 hours of etching, for whatever reason, I think we're ready to go here. Let's see how this came out. Not bad, huh? I just gotta sand it a little bit, clean it up, but I think it came out nice. Alright, so the box has been completely constructed. It's all welded on the inside, and I've tack welded it, or just little tiny stitch welds, I guess, on the outside. It's time to fill in all of this gap. I've carefully beveled the edge of everything so I can, let's see if I can get a better shot of this. You can see I'm going to weld into this, into the gap here, and then I will grind back the weld and then sand it smooth so that it becomes one solid piece, or at least to the appearance of such. After that, I'm gonna use the random orbital sander just to take out all the grind marks. You can actually see the top here has been ground, but you can clearly see all the lines and the swirls. It's not super important in this case. We're going to be getting a black patina over the whole thing. It will hide various sins, and realistically it's supposed to look a bit beat and aged and so forth. If I were trying to leave this bare metal, like a shiny surface, I would do a lot more attention to detail. And a lot more sanding and so forth, but there's basically no point when it's all going to get covered up anyway, and I am under time constraints for this project in the first place, so realistically the amount of work I'm going to put in is kind of unnecessary given the intended rough look. I just want to get the surface somewhat consistent, so that when I do the patina, it comes out, you know, not all splotchy and random, at least not to a huge extent. So we'll see how it goes. Weld, grind, sand, more sanding. Alright, so after much grinding and sanding, we've got all the sides done. I cleaned up the bottom. The cube is actually upside down right now. So I cleaned up the bottom, I cleaned up the stand, the 6-inch tall stand here. And now I'm just going to weld it all along the perimeter to permanently attach it. And I'll just probably do a little sanding to clean up the slag and everything afterwards. But that's pretty much it. Alright, now for the fun part. I gotta do the top of it, so I gotta flip it over twice. I'd say it's around 400-ish pounds now. Getting a little difficult to move. Alright, so I got my top all cleaned up, the edges sanded down. These are my holes for my rivets for the plaque, and I need to drill a hole in the center for the helmet that's going to be upturned right here. I'm gonna heat the hell out of this area with a torch, oxyacetylene. That should anneal the steel, because drilling this, even with a drill press, is difficult. Without a drill press, the tough steel is just too much. It's gonna, even though it's only 1/4 inch thick, it would take me forever and probably kill my drill bit. So I'll heat it up, soften the steel, 13/64 drill bit, and a 1/4 by 20 tap. Hopefully this works, because I'd hate to have to weld the helmet on. I could. It would actually be easier than this, but you know, if it ever gets ripped off or damaged, it's going to be a lot more difficult to replace. So I'd rather bolt it on or screw it on, just for the future. We'll see how it goes though. Alright, so I've got my hole drilled and tapped over there. It's time for the helmet. This is a replica steel M1 helmet, World War II era. A real helmet would have been nice, but not cheap. I think I saw them anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 on eBay, so and I hate to destroy a piece of history, so just using a cheap replica. It's gonna be sanded off all the paint so I can blacken it just the same as the rest of the monument. Hopefully it'll match. It should be close enough. Well, there she is. Construction is officially complete. I need to just do the blackened patina, of course. But it's getting late. It's been a long weekend, so I'm calling it quits for now, and I'll dedicate time later on so I can get that patina just right. Aged, ancient, blackened finish. So, but yeah, that's it. I don't think there's any other work to do. Maybe a little bit of finish sanding. You can still see still a little bit of roughness on the right and left side of the cube there. But minimal stuff. All right, so final stages of preparation here. I'm doing some final sanding, and I'm cleaning the whole thing with acetone to get it perfect. I'm going to protect the bronze pentagrams by using a inverse pattern adhesive vinyl from what I used to etch them originally. So I'll peel this off, and I will just stick it directly on, and that way the patina chemicals won't affect the bronze, hopefully. It'll just save me a lot of cleanup work. As before, the pentagrams are a little too big, so I just kind of patched in a little piece of vinyl on the bottom just to complete the design. But gotta stick those on, finish cleaning, and it's on to the blackening. Well, there's one coat. Looks a little bit ugly, but as you can see, it this kind of top crap wipes right off, so got a lot of that to do. So second coat is done. Looks pretty good. I'd say I'm stopping here. You can really see, but we're losing the sun here, but it's got kind of a mottled finish, which is exactly what I wanted, especially when you look at the original illustration. It's kind of got this ancient look to it. I think I'm pretty close. I may scratch it up, but I'm going to put some stove black on it first. Alright, so here we are after the stove black. I put it on pretty heavy. You can see it's still drying and absorbing. This is more or less exactly how I wanted it to look, so I'm pretty pleased. I did seem to lose the mottled look. It's kind of hard to tell, it's all different drying stages here, but I think I'll let it dry overnight. See how it looks, maybe scratch it up a little bit with some fine sandpaper, and then maybe one more light coat of stove black on top. Then I'll pull off the vinyl, and hopefully the pentagram survived. And that's pretty much it. The helmet came out pretty good as well. The only thing of note is that outer ring didn't seem to take it all. I'm guessing what this is maybe a hammered on aluminum ring. Not sure if I'll leave it on. Kind of an interesting contrast. Alright, so final hour here. I've scratched up the surface quite a bit. Various grits of sandpaper, Scotch-Brite, so forth. Just trying to do a random aging look. Trying to peel off that vinyl and see what we got underneath here. See if I can do this one-handed here. Oh yeah. Look at that. Not too bad. Alright, so here's my photography rig for taking some decent pictures of the monument, but I got one thing left to do, and that is the plaque, the inscribed plaque. This is actually the second one I've done. There was a minor revision in the wording, so I just finished this, and what I've done is I've taken black acrylic paint and I've kind of filled in the letters. Now I'm going to sand it back, and hopefully just the letters will have the paint in them to make it really legible. Probably will clear coat the plaque as well, and then I'll rivet it on the monument, and it's done. And there you have it. That stands out a lot better, I think. Even with some age on that, that'll still look pretty good, I think. So let's clear coat it, and then let's rivet it to the monument. Alright, so I don't know if you can see this sticking out here. These are copper rivets. I would have loved to have used bronze rivets, but I basically couldn't find anything like that. I found some with brass, mandrels and so forth, but this should be close enough. So that's pretty much it. I think it looks pretty good. Matches the bronze on the pentagrams. Pretty happy with how it turned out here. I love the contrast between the shiny bronze and the you know, dull, kind of ancient black. I was a little bit nervous initially when I was doing the bronze pentagram. They just kind of, you know, with the shiny metal and the shiny bronze, they almost just kind of flowed together. They weren't very obvious, but I mean, there's no mistaking it now. Yeah, not perfect, but what is? if these pictures come out any good, I will probably post them at the end of the video. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you liked it. If you didn't, please leave derogatory comments below. The worse the better. And that's it. Till next time.